So 2025 question C4, so it's part B, it's the exercise trainer, the cross trainer. The setup of it is fairly straightforward. Okay, so part 1 is to draw the given diagram. Now I'm going to start down at the bottom, so that line that goes from C to D, just start there, so it's 145. Start with that. So that's point C and that's point D there, and point P is located as the midpoint of C and D, so half of 145 doesn't really go, so I'm just going to bisect it just to get an accurate middle there. It's good enough to do anyway. Okay, so there's our point P. Now, I'm just going to continue with the left side here. So we have an angle of 84 degrees. So just going to get my protractor, stick it on point C. Just be accurate with the line at the bottom of the protractor. Make sure that it's running in line over this side. You know what I mean? Don't be slightly off, because you will be. You know, the margin of error increases the more you're off. So just try and be accurate with this. Alright, it's 84 degrees. Nice and light up through that. And we have 125 first of all to here, and then another 40 up to point A. So here's point A, point B, and point E then over this side is just straight up, and it's 35. Okay, I'm going to draw that circle. Okay, so that circle that I've just drawn there, the 35 radius one, is actually the green circle that's in the question. The E to D one. I realised there's a bigger circle that's diameter 80 outside it, and there's also a line down the bottom here that's kind of hatched in that kind of pinky purple colour. Alright, I'm actually just going to leave that off just for the moment. I will draw it in at the end, but I'm going to leave it just until I have the question solved first. Otherwise it's, you know, there's just more lines on the page than there needs to be. Now, so the instructions that we've been given, okay, so point A, it says first of all, actually, and this helps as well if you write it up here and just kind of break down the instructions that you've been given. So arm ED rotates anti-clockwise about E. Okay, so we know this spins around here, so I don't think I need to write that down, right? Points E and B are fixed, meaning they do not move position. Okay, so E and B will always stay exactly where they are. C and D are pin jointed. And what a pin joint means is basically, so for example, if these were two links, and there was a pin joint where the two pieces of lead are, it basically means that they can kind of move. They're connected, but they can kind of rotate around each other like that. Okay, and then arms AC. So AC rotate about B. So AC rotates about B. And then P is located in the midpoint of that. Okay, so we have that, right? So as I said, okay, we're just going to write up here. So AD rotates about E. That was the first part we were given anyway. Okay, so if I'm just to look at those, right, the two I'm focusing on at the moment are actually the rotation ones. Okay, so rotates about E. Okay, so there's a circle drawn here because D rotates around E here, and that's going to be useful for us in a minute because we're going to use that to plot points as that rotates. But the other one that I actually want to focus on is that AC, so this link here, rotates around B. Now B stays in the exact same place, right? But if I was to just use this pencil now, for example, right, it's almost conveniently the right length. So B is fixed exactly where my finger is there, okay? But it rotates about B, meaning that it can do that, okay, in either direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw an arc similar like to the circle that we had here that actually kind of does the same thing as that, right? So if I just put my compass on B and open it out as far as C and just swing an arc in here, right, that arc is the B to C arc. Alright, I wouldn't normally do this. I'm just going to write BC arc there just so you know what it is. And I can also do one for AB. Okay, now what that means is at all times, right, E stays where it is, B stays where it is, we know that. D is always going to be on this circle. C is always going to be on this arc, and A is always going to be on that arc. It's just a case of using the other pin joints there that we have as well, and the links that we're already given in the question to actually be able to plot where on those arcs they're going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the ED circle here, and I'm going to split it into 12. So this is going to be D1, so it's anti-clockwise. You know, you'd end up with the same solution whether you went clockwise or anti-clockwise, so it doesn't really matter, but the question says anti-clockwise, we'll go with that. Okay, and back around. Now I'm just going to zoom in here a small bit because so you can see more of it. So basically what's happening here now is I've basically simulated when E or when ED rotates to position D1. Okay, and then when it's going to be D2 and D3 and D4, so on and so forth, right? Now this link from C to D, okay, is going to obviously move as this shifts. Okay, so when D moves to D1, it's going to pull C with it, because it's, you know, it's the same length, you know, the length of this line doesn't change, so it's going to move with it, and obviously when it moves to D2 and D3 and so on and so forth. But just remember, right, so when I take this length, right, so there's my C to D link. When D moves to D1, I'm going to put my pin or my compass on D1 now, and I'm going to swing it over here. But just remember, this C arc that we drew, C has to be on this arc. So when I mark that, C1, though it looks like it's not the same line anyway, is going to be there. And so what I'm going to do is I then connect D1 to here, and that would be my link in that position. Now I'm looking to plot point P. P is going to be the same distance, it's always the middle of that, so I'm going to take P to D or C, whichever. So that original halfway length. Just swing it on my new line here now. I'm going to get that point. So I have point P1 now, so P goes to P1, but what I need to do now is repeat that process a number of times for each one of these points on D. Okay, so D to C. So when D moves into position 2, again remember C is on this arc, so that's C2 there, and I connect that to D2, and I can then mark the halfway on this one. Now it would be very convenient if you had two compasses for doing this, right, just so you don't have to keep switching compasses to make it work, but I have them, so I'll have to drive on. Okay, but even a mat set compass would do you. Now I could measure what the halfway is there. Yeah, so it's 72.5, which we knew. So I might actually just measure it next time. But anyway, taking my C to D again, swinging it from D3. Again, remembering C is always on this arc. Mark my 72.5. So there's my P point there. We go again. 74. Right, they're almost in the same place, but it doesn't matter. I do suggest you do this one at a time, because there will be quite a lot of lines and points around each other, so you're more likely to kind of, I suppose, keep track of which point is what if you're doing them all one at a time. Just notice I haven't marked all, done mark, and then do the lines afterwards. I'm doing each line as I'm doing them. You kind of have to be a bit smart about it. So nearly there now. As far as 9. Okay, so it's a repetitive process, but it's straightforward enough. Just keep the concentration, make sure you are definitely using the right marks and the right lines. It's the easiest way to go wrong in this. It only takes one point to be slightly off, and it kind of pulls that shape that we're kind of forming in here way off. I'm just doing 11 there, so that'll be the last one. And 2.5 there. Okay, so that will be my locus inside here. I connect up all these points. I didn't label them all as P, whatever it was, so I can kind of clearly mark which one is which. So I'm happy enough with that, but if you would like to mark them all, as you can see I did mark the first couple, but that was just because I was explaining. It is fairly straightforward to follow which one was which. Okay, so we've ended up with a kind of a, I'm not going to call it an ellipse because it's not, but that kind of a shape. Right, and that is our locus for P. Now, I know the question included that there was a link here with B, and A, but actually that had nothing to do with the question, because it wouldn't make any difference to the actual question. So we don't actually need to worry about it. We're actually only asked to plot the path of P, so you can just completely ignore this. They do often tend to add in extra little bits about the link AB or whatever. It's just to kind of throw you and kind of, you know, is this student able to actually think about what it is that they're being asked to do? This had nothing to do with being able to get this. Okay, all the work was down in this portion here. You did, of course, have to, I suppose they did give us the link that it was rotated about B, so you did have to know to swing this arc, but this arc didn't make any difference, whereas this arc was the important one. So that's the question finished there now.